The floor is lava! Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. Part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, the cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help!" Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level, and a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence, and when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age. About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, the total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the end game here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first.
Consider South America and Africa. Don't they kind of look like they fit together, like puzzle pieces? Well, they actually did. But about 130 million years ago, South America was like, bye, and slowly started drifting away. These days, it's around 1,800 miles from Africa, and it's still on the move. Every year, the continent shifts a little more toward the Pacific Ocean. So, how's that even happening? Tectonic plates are constantly moving. That's what makes the Earth's surface shift over time, going from this to what we see today. But those movements happen so slowly that you and I can't see them go. So, no, Brazilians or Chileans aren't out there feeling their continent inching westward. But the numbers don't lie. South America is moving, and apparently all it wants is to get as far away as possible from this massive underwater mountain range called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. But what exactly is pushing the land toward the Pacific Ocean? It is the heat inside our planet. Way down beneath the ocean, there are cracks in the Earth's crust, and magma, super hot melted rock, rises up through those cracks. When that happens, the magma cools and hardens into solid rock. Over time, this process might build underwater mountains, like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And as more new crust forms, it begins to push the older crust out of the way. In the process, tectonic plates and the continents riding on top of them get pushed along. Now, on the other side of South America, over by the Pacific, there is the Nazca Plate. It's heavier and it's moving eastward. Since it is denser, it is sliding underneath the South American Plate. This entire process is called subduction, and it's happening at a rate of about 3 inches per year. By the way, the collision between these two plates is what's behind all those breathtaking volcanoes scattered throughout the Andes, and it's also making the continent move. So, if everything goes according to plan, projections show that South America will end up more centered in the Pacific Ocean in the future. But some models suggest something way crazier. Before we get into that, though, we need to clear something up. Why on earth isn't Africa following in South America's footsteps? I mean, shouldn't it be drifting west too? Well, not quite. Africa is doing its own thing, because it sits on the African Plate. So the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is located between those two continents, and just like it pushes the South American Plate, it also pushes the African Plate, but in the opposite direction. It's like this ridge is trying to split up two ex-besties, you know? But there's more. Africa is also being influenced by the East African Rift. That's one of those massive cracks we talked about earlier, but it's happening on land, which makes it extra dramatic. This is what's causing the continent to slowly split apart. It's a long story, but let's just say the rift is pulling Africa in more directions than South America ever had to deal with. Okay, now it is finally time to talk about that crazier thing that might happen to South America and everything around it in the future. Theory number 1. It could break away from North America. I know, super dramatic, but don't panic. We're talking hundreds of millions of years from now, and I won't be around. You see, both continents are moving in the same general direction, but at different speeds. The North American Plate is cruising along at about 1 inch per year, while South America is moving a bit faster. So even though they're heading the same way, they are not keeping pace. Over time, as the Atlantic Ocean continues to widen and the Pacific keeps shrinking, all this tectonic movement could eventually pull the Americas apart. Theory number 2. Marine life could go through some major changes. Right now, the Americas act as kind of a giant wall between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Because of that, sea animals have evolved differently on each side. Take the green sea turtle, for example. The ones living in the Atlantic tend to be bigger and lighter in color. Meanwhile, their Pacific cousins are usually smaller and darker. But if, one day, there is no land blocking these two populations from mixing, they would end up with brand new migration routes, new nesting spots, and a lot more overlap in their territories. Now, multiply that scenario by hundreds of other species, and things could really get shaken up. We're talking about new interactions, unexpected competition, and maybe even the rise of entirely new species. Alright, theory number 3. America might meet Africa again. Right now, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is busy creating a new seafloor, and because of that, the Atlantic Ocean is slowly getting wider. But in about 125 million years, scientists believe that process could come to a stop. Instead of the seafloor spreading apart, the ocean floor might start getting pulled under the continents. When that happens, the Atlantic will stop growing and start shrinking, and the water section between South America and Africa is likely to be the first part pulled beneath the land. That means the Americas and Africa could meet again. And when that happens, border countries could turn into super shaky places, with earthquakes happening all the time and brand new volcanoes popping up left and right. The eastern United States would no longer be known for the peaceful green slopes of the Appalachians, but for snow-covered giants that occasionally spew lava and ash, more like the Cascade Range out west. Countries would end up with totally new neighbors. Brazil might line up with Nigeria and Cameroon. Uruguay could be sitting right next to Angola. And Argentina might be sharing a border with South Africa. So if these two continents really do merge, how intense would that be? Well, for starters, this new supercontinent would instantly become the biggest one on Earth, about 1.5 times the size of Asia. And chances are, a brand new mountain range would form right where the continents meet, creating a natural border between nations. Being part of the same massive continent could make a lot of things way easier. For one, tourism could totally take off. People traveling between countries by land without needing pricey plane tickets could be a game changer. But it wouldn't stop there. Other types of economic activity could get a major boost too. Now on one side we have South America, which already produces and sells a wide variety of foods, from wheat to bananas, beef, cocoa, soybeans, hey, you name it. On the other side, there is Africa, exporting things like textiles and clothing. That alone would make them a super powerful bloc when it comes to trading raw goods. But can you name another important thing these two continents have in common? Yep, petroleum. Countries in South America, like Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia, are major oil exporters. And over in Africa, you've got Nigeria, Algeria, and Libya doing the same. Now, can you see just how powerful that kind of union could be? Meanwhile, let's talk about animals. These two massive lands coming together could lead us to wild meetups, like a capybara sharing space with a Nile crocodile, or a sloth seeing a hyena from the top of a tree. This could even lead to new animal hybrids showing up, like a cabby crocodile or a sloth hyena. Okay, those weren't the cleverest names, and honestly, these animals wouldn't be able to mate or even wouldn't want to. But you get the point, right? It's not all positive, unfortunately. New species showing up could become predators, competitors, or even parasites to the native plants and animals. It would take a long time for things to settle into a new balance in those border regions. But honestly, no one really knows how long it would take. The only thing I do know is neither of us will be around to see it, which is okay. So it turns out that you can't drive between South America and North America. And there's a simple reason for that. There are no roads connecting the two continents, not even a rudimentary one. Technically, you could try your luck crossing on foot, but let me tell you, that would be a huge, huge mistake. The region that connects the two continents is called the Darién Gap. It stretches across southern Panama's Darién province and the northern part of Colombia. The only land route there is a 60-mile jungle trek. Crossing it can take anywhere from 3 to 10 days. It depends on weather conditions, how much you're carrying, and honestly, just pure luck. Chance plays a big role here, because this isn't some chill, relaxing nature walk. It's a harsh, extreme environment, known for being completely isolated and one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Still, people seem to forget that and go there anyway. Every year, the number of people crossing just keeps growing. In 2014, fewer than 10,000 people crossed the gap. In 2023, that number increased to 520,000. Now, you might be wondering, what are so many people doing in the middle of the two American continents, risking all that danger? Well, that's because the Darién Gap has become a route for refugees migrating to North America. But to get there, they face all kinds of dangers, from insect bites and infections to serious fractures. We're talking about a no-man's land. Since there are no police stations, immigrants must also watch out for thieves. Along the way, they have no choice but to rely on and support each other. Most people start the crossing with at least a tent or tarp, rain boots, water, and some food. But these things get heavy fast, and people normally can't carry enough supplies for the entire journey. At some point, people start drinking river water to avoid dehydration. But the water's full of bacteria and dirt, so it causes intestinal issues. And if things get serious, there's no medical help there. To make this whole scenario even worse, the temperatures are brutal, often hitting over 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, a small subset of people who venture through the Darién Gap are hardcore adventurers and travelers looking for a survival experience in the jungle. But this region is no place for a relaxing vacation. A group of tourists who went there in 2023 ended up getting jungle rot, a fungus that affects the feet. The situation got so bad that a woman had to be carried out by the group on the last day because she couldn't walk. No matter how prepared people are for the Darién Gap, in the end, survival mostly comes down to luck. Out there, travelers won't find cities with solid infrastructure where they can crash at a hotel and gear up for the next day. In some spots, they might stumble across basic camps right in the jungle. These camps might offer wooden platforms for tents, bucket showers, toilets, and even plates of chicken and rice. But it all comes at a price. Wi-Fi, for example, might cost $2 an hour, and that seems like a pretty good deal, considering there's no cell phone service on the trail. They pretty much lose all contact with the outside world. Now picture a dense rainforest with steep, muddy terrain. The hiking trail is littered with boulders and tangled with vines, like nature's own tripwires. It climbs sharply over a mountain, becoming a serious challenge even for someone in good physical shape. The area also gets constant heavy rainfall, which can lead to landslides, flash flooding, and extremely muddy conditions. The situation gets so intense that even the t-shirts and faces of those who make the crossing end up covered in mud. They'll also have to cross a lot of fast-moving rivers. A Venezuelan dad who recently went through the area with his 2 kids said their sneakers ripped apart on the very first day. That's how powerful the rivers can be. And they're deep, too. Sometimes the water reaches all the way up to their shoulders. But the dangers in that area aren't recent. For centuries, the Darién Gap was thought to be impossible to cross. The first Europeans who ventured into Latin America saw it as kind of a jungle training school. They totally knew about its dangers, but still, many adventurers tried to make the crossing in the years that followed. In 1854, for example, an expedition disappeared for 49 days in the jungle, battling starvation and exhaustion. Then again, in 1870, a group of 100 men set out to cross it. Even though they were well prepared and carried cutting-edge equipment for the time, they still suffered tremendously during the journey. They had to rely on incredible resilience to survive the challenge. Over the years, people who ventured in often ended up passing away from hunger, thirst, and even drowning in rivers. They also faced the risk of being attacked by dangerous animals like jaguars, white-lipped pecaries, and the fer de lance, a fast, irritable snake that is one of the most venomous out there. The area is also swarming with mosquitoes, which can spread serious health problems. Leaning against trees to rest can also be risky. This jungle is full of spiked chunga palm trees, which are covered in long black spines up to 8 inches long. Unfortunately for us, these spines are covered in all sorts of bacteria. Just brush against a chunga, and you could end up with infected wounds. And yet another danger is getting lost in the dense forest and never finding your way back to safety. These days, though, this risk is a lot lower. Some people have mentioned color-coded markers that help guide travelers and keep them from going the wrong way. If they see blue or green fabric tied to trees, it means keep walking. But if they spot red fabric, that's a sign they're going the wrong way and need to turn around quickly. Since there are so many dangers, why not just build a road through the Darién Gap? While it might seem like a good idea, building a road connecting Panama and Colombia isn't really that simple. The Darién Gap has a humid climate, tough terrain, and constant rainfall, which means any attempt to build a functional road would be highly challenging and super expensive. Even though there have been previous attempts to fill in the gap. See, there's a huge road system called the Pan-American Highway, which stretches all the way from Alaska to the southern tip of Argentina. Nowadays, this highway hits a roadblock right at the Darién Gap. But it wasn't supposed to be like this, as the original idea was for the road to go through there. Leaders from Latin American countries tried to make this plan happen in the 70s, and then again in the 90s. But a lot of people were against it, mainly because they wanted to protect the local communities and the rainforest. Since the Darién Gap is mostly untouched by humans, it's one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. It's believed that 1 in 5 species are endemic to the region, meaning they only exist in that specific area, like the Darién pocket gopher and the slatty slender mouse opossum. A road would have really damaged the ecosystem in the area, so the plans were scrapped. Eventually, an alternative was created to travel by sea. At least 2 companies started a ferry service connecting the 2 countries. However, the business wasn't profitable, and they ended up shutting down. Not long ago, Panama decided to close the Darién Gap route. Now they're sealed off with barbed wire fencing. It might just be a matter of time before other routes are created. But if you are an adventurer looking to visit South America, it's probably not best to wait for that. Traveling by plane to Colombia will always be a much safer option.
Is the Big Apple getting a little too heavy for its own good? A recent study revealed that New York City is sinking. And get this, it's all because of those towering skyscrapers. Apparently, the whole event is called subsidence, which is when the Earth's surface settles bit by bit, or suddenly sinks. Soft sediments shifting and the weight of the city itself are the culprits behind this sinking sensation. Now, don't get too alarmed. The study found that New York is sinking at a rate of 0.04 to 0.07 inches per year. Sure, that doesn't sound like much, but there are parts of the city that are sinking even faster than that. This sinking situation could cause some trouble for the city, especially since it's already pretty low-lying and home to over 8 million people. So it's important that local authorities come up with some strategies to tackle the growing flood risk and rising sea levels. Although, I'm not sure building giant seawalls is the way to go. We might need to get a little more creative than that. Geologists want to make sure we're all aware that building more high-rises near the coast, rivers, or lakes could contribute to future flood risks. So we really need to think twice before we start constructing skyscrapers left and right. In recent studies, scientists calculated the total mass of all the buildings in New York City, over 1 million of them, and it adds up to a whopping 1.68 trillion pounds. Talk about a heavy load. Now, they didn't include the weight of the roads, sidewalks, bridges, and other paved areas, so you can only imagine how much more weight is added to the city. But hey, even with these limitations, the researchers did a pretty good job of accounting for the complex geology beneath New York, including the sand, silt, clay deposits, and good old bedrock. They found out that certain types of soil, like clay and artificial fill, are more prone to subsidence. On the other hand, bedrock stays pretty firm and keeps those skyscrapers in place. So at least we don't have to worry about the Empire State Building taking a dive anytime soon. Comparing their fancy models with satellite data, the researchers created a map of the city showing where the sinking is happening. And guess what? The increased urbanization and all that groundwater pumping and draining are only making things worse. It's high time we start protecting our resources, don't you think? I wouldn't start packing my bags just yet. New York isn't the only sinking city out there, you know. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is facing some serious sinking action too. In fact, parts of it could be underwater by 2050. That's like a real-life Atlantis situation. Over 30 million people in Jakarta are now deciding if they should relocate the entire city. If there's a city out there we should worry about sinking, that's Venice for sure. But why is it so eager to take a dive, you might ask? Well, let me tell you the complex truth. You see, Venice decided to set up shop on a marshy lagoon with shoddy foundations. As time went by, the ground underneath just couldn't hold it together. and started compacting like a squished marshmallow. On top of that, the city's been slurping up groundwater like it's going out of style or something. The cherry on top of this mushy cake is that the sea levels have also been slowly rising. And guess what? Those sneaky plate tectonics are having a laugh by shoving the Adriatic plate under the Apennine Mountains, giving Venice an extra push downward. Someone had the bright idea to stop pumping groundwater, thinking they could stop the sinking shenanigans. But hold your gondolas. A new study revealed that the sinking hasn't completely stopped, just slowed down a bit. It turns out the whole area is tilting ever so slightly to the east, with Venice perched on the slightly higher end. You must be wondering how much Venice sinks in a year, right? Brace yourself for this shocking revelation. It's sinking at a rate of about 0.04 to 0.07 inches a year, similar to New York. At this pace, in the next 20 years, it could sink a whopping 3 inches below sea level. To avoid turning into a Venetian fishbowl, locals are frantically building special barriers to keep the water from crashing into the lagoon. But don't hold your breath, because this project has had more delays than you'd expect. Oh, and have you noticed that charming old-style vibe in Venice? It's not just because they're fans of the vintage look. Those salty waters have been wreaking havoc on the buildings, thanks to the water levels constantly breaching the original damp proofing. Now the water's cozying up to the masonry, and the ground floors of many apartments are no longer safe enough to live in. Now, when will Venice take a dive into the abyss? It's hard to say for sure. Subsidence and rising sea levels are as slow and unpredictable as a turtle in a marathon. But experts have playfully warned that if things continue as they are, Venice could be doing the backstroke beneath the waves by 2100. Fear not, though. They're doing their best to protect this floating gem of history and culture from becoming a Hollywood disaster flick. So don't cancel that Venice day trip just yet. New Orleans has a peculiar watery situation going on too. You see, this lively place was initially built just a smidge above sea level, and now it's gradually sinking. Back in the day, when an area of the city called the French Quarter was just popping up, folks had to make do with what they had. They scored the best land they could find, but it was only about 10 feet above sea level. And let's not forget, the rest of the city is as flat as a pancake, with the areas around the French Quarter being just a hair lower. Now, even though they knew they were up against some soggy odds, the resourceful New Orleans residents did their best to elevate their houses above the flood-prone land they chose as their home. There's more. The ground beneath New Orleans is as wobbly as a plate of Jell-O. Architects had to keep things short and sweet because they feared the soil couldn't handle the weight of taller structures. They played it safe, sticking to 2 or 2.5 stories. Here's where it gets interesting. The city installed a fancy drainage system in the 1900s, thinking it would solve their water woes. And while it did help with the marshes and all, it inadvertently sucked the life out of the soil. Yep, the ground was left high and dry, without enough sediment and water to keep it steady. As a result, those former marshes sank as if they were in a quicksand competition. By the 1930s, things got even more topsy-turvy. 1/3 of the city was below sea level, and by the time Hurricane Katrina made its grand entrance, that number skyrocketed to around 50%. Oh, and here's the icing on the cake. Sea levels decided to join the party, rising faster than a helium balloon. So now, not only is New Orleans sinking, but the surrounding area is also at various degrees below sea level. So what can we do about all these sinking cities? Well, for instance, we could manage our water consumption a bit better. We can't just keep sucking groundwater out of the earth like there's no tomorrow. We've got to find new ways to quench our urban centers' thirst. Think about it. we could purify surface waters, or even turn salty seawater into a sweet solution. Of course, we'll need a boatload of energy to make it all work. Speaking of great urban water management, let me tell you about a town in Denmark called Nye. These guys have got it all figured out. They collect rainwater and use it to supply their toilets and washing machines. Talk about resourcefulness. Now that's what I call a splash of genius.
Oh look, there's a giant blob heading straight for New York City. Oh wait, hold on. You'll actually have to look down, not up. Because this blob is a mass of hot rock moving beneath the Earth's surface. And when it finally reaches the Big Apple, some say it could tear the continent in two. But Yankees fans, and even you Mets fans, don't worry, this journey is going to take about 15 million years or so. You see, a long time ago, people noticed something curious. When they looked at world maps, they thought, don't the continents look like puzzle pieces that could fit together? That couldn't just be a coincidence, right? Then, in the year 1912, a German meteorologist named Alfred Wegener came up with a revolutionary idea, something we now know as the theory of continental drift. Wegener said the continents are always on the move, and those huge chunks of land we see today were all once connected, forming one giant supercontinent called Pangaea. That idea suddenly explained a lot of mysteries, like why fossils from the same species turn up in different corners of the world, even though entire oceans lie between them, or why coastlines of continents match up so neatly, just like South America and Africa. Wegener also explained that mountains form when a drifting continent runs into another one, crumpling the land and pushing it upward. That is exactly how the Himalayas came to be. The Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate, and the land rose into the massive mountain range we see today. Now these days, everybody learns about Wegener's idea in school and takes it as fact. But back then, many people thought he was completely out of his mind. I mean, whole continents moving around? What on earth could push them? That's why it took scientists more than 50 years to finally go, oh, I see, it's the Earth's mantle. Yep, slow-moving currents of hot rock deep in the Earth's mantle push the tectonic plates around, and that means the continents move too. Picture super tough puzzle pieces floating on top of boiling oatmeal. That's a picture. Yep, they drift, and sooner or later they crash into each other. This is what happens on Earth's surface. And that's how we finally agreed that Wegener was right. But what if I told you that might not always be the case? Some experts agree that the supercontinent Pangaea started breaking apart about 200 million years ago. And that's how we ended up with the world map we know today. But a recent study is challenging part of that idea. And it all comes down to a giant mass of hot rock, something scientists call the Northern Appalachian Anomaly, or just NAA. Yep, what we casually call a blob, the experts call an anomaly, and that is simply because it is hotter than the rock around it. So this anomaly sits about 124 miles beneath the mountains of New England and stretches up to 249 miles wide. It lies in the asthenosphere, the semi-molten layer of Earth's upper mantle. But here's the strange part. It should not even be there. I mean, rock formations like this normally don't exist in that part of Earth's interior. For years, scientists thought the anomaly was left over from when the North American continent broke apart from Northwest Africa about 180 million years ago. This new study says that might not be the case. It suggests the blob is actually linked to the process that split Greenland from North America only about 80 million years ago. The idea then is that this blob is a leftover from when the landmass broke apart, a piece that never quite settled down. This is one stubborn blob we're talking about because it is still on the move, super slowly. But still, it moves only about 12 miles in a million years. Over time, it's already traveled more than 1,100 miles from where it first appeared. And now, New Yorkers, watch out! This blob of scorching hot rock is heading your way. Okay, I know, I'm being a little dramatic. The truth is, we really don't have to worry. First, scientists say it won't even get near the city for at least 15 million years. And second, even though we call it a blob, it is not something gelatinous. It is not oozing. And it is definitely not going to push its way up through the Earth's crust and invade the New York subway, or anything like that. That is just not going to happen. What the anomaly will look like, or what it might do to the continent in the future, is still a mystery for geologists. But they are pretty confident it will not have any real impact on human infrastructure or on our daily lives. It is not like lava that's suddenly going to burst through the floor of your house. That's because, at the end of the day, the blob is just rock. Like any rock you see on the street, only super high, enormous, and buried deep inside the Earth. To explain why this rock is sitting in such a weird spot, scientists came up with what they call the mantle wave theory. So think of it kind of like a lava lamp. After continents break apart, hot, heavy rock can detach from the bottom of the tectonic plates in blobs. These blobs, or pieces of rock, move around under the crust and create waves. When that hot material slips under a continent, it works like the flame under a hot air balloon. It gives the land a little lift. Then, when continents stretch and split, space opens up underneath and semi-molten rock quickly fills in. Eventually, it cools down, gets heavier, and sinks. Meanwhile, hotter mantle material rises up and creates a warm patch called a thermal anomaly. This sudden motion shakes up the base of the continent. Imagine a row of dominoes. One piece falls and the rest follows. Blobs of rock start dripping downward one after another, and over time, they slowly move inland. Scientists think these rock currents keep flowing, rippling under the surface for millions of years. Now, knowing all this matters because the anomaly might have played a role in shaping the land above it. For example, it may have lifted up some ancient mountains over the past few million years. That helps to explain a big mystery of the region: why the Appalachians are still standing. I mean, why haven't they worn down as much as you would expect after all this time? Well, think about it. The Appalachians are ancient. This mountain range in North America started forming hundreds of millions of years ago, long before the dinosaurs. With all that time, rain, wind, and erosion should have worn them down to almost nothing by now. Honestly, some geologists expected them to be rolling hills at best. But nope, they're still mountains, pretty ones too, and much bigger than they should be. And here's where the blob comes in. See, when a giant pocket of superhot rock sits under a mountain range, it can actually give the crust a little lift. It's kind of like putting a balloon under a blanket. The blanket rises up. The heat makes the Earth's crust lighter. So even while wind and rain are wearing the mountains down from above, the Earth is gently pushing them back up from below. There is another positive takeaway from this study. These new insights can help scientists better understand other strange geological features around the world. In fact, the researchers believe they may have already found a twin to this blob, sitting under north-central Greenland and also tied to the Labrador Sea. So, what can we conclude from all this? Well, tectonic plate movement is still the reasons continents break apart. But the process goes much deeper than we thought. The effects of ancient rifting can still play out millions of years after the surface split, just like what happened in Greenland. Although it's still really hard to predict what this anomaly will look like in the future, we know one thing for sure right now: there is nothing to fear, and I'm betting that most of us won't be around for that.
There's a stretch of water that even the most experienced explorers fear. No matter what season you choose to cross it in, you risk meeting face-to-face with waves that can reach as tall as the Hollywood sign. I'm talking about the Drake Passage, the waterway connecting the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, stretching from Cape Horn at South America's southernmost tip to Antarctica's South Shetland Islands. It's about as wide as the distance from London to Berlin and takes up to 48 hours to cross. Some sailors compare getting on the other side to going to the moon. That's how challenging it is. Even the man who discovered it, Sir Francis Drake, never sailed these waters because they seemed too dangerous to him and opted for a calmer, although longer, Strait of Magellan. The passage took the lives of around 20,000 sailors and over 800 ships. Tourists who want to see Antarctica cross the Drake Passage on a regular basis, although it's still often called the world's most terrifying ocean crossing. The Antarctic Peninsula, where travelers go, isn't really part of Antarctica itself. It sticks out and points towards South America like two fingers almost touching it. The water gets squeezed between these two land masses, making strong ocean currents. The passage is part of the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the largest ocean current on Earth. The water rushes through the passage at a speed between 95 and 150 million cubic meters per second, which makes it rougher. And then there are winds that usually blow from west to east and are very strong between 40 and 60 degrees latitude. That's why those areas are called the Roaring 40s, Furious 50s, and Screaming 60s. Land slows down winds, which is why storms hitting Ireland and the UK get weaker as they move east. But Drake's latitude is the only place where winds can blow all around the Earth without being stopped by land, so they keep getting faster. These strong winds turn into huge waves that can hit ships really hard, normally around 13 to 16 feet tall. They're much higher than waves in the Atlantic. Drake Passage also has underwater mountains that you can't see. The huge current squeezes through this narrow passage and causes waves to crash against these mountains underwater. These internal waves create whirls that bring cold water up from the deep ocean. So it's not just rough on the surface, the water is wild all the way down. The first sailor managed to sail around Cape Horn and through the Drake Passage in 1616. It was a Dutch navigator, Willem Schouten, in 1616. But the most famous attempt to cross it was undertaken by Sir Ernest Henry Shackleton on his ship named Endurance. He and 27 of his men set off from South Georgia, aiming to reach Vassal Bay in Antarctica. But things didn't go as planned. On January 19, 1915, their ship got stuck in the ice. And by October, it began to sink. They camped on floating ice for 2 months before sailing lifeboats to a remote, icy place called Elephant Island. Shackleton and 5 men made a risky journey to South Georgia to get help. It took them 15 days to cross Drake Passage with hurricane winds. Finally, they arrived safely and organized a rescue for the rest of their crew. Scientists found the shipwreck of Endurance only in 2022, 10,000 feet below the water. In December of 2019, 6 fearless athletes decided to cross the Drake Passage by rowing a boat for the first time in history. It took them 12 days of non-stop rowing with a 90-minute rotation of rowers. They managed to do it, and it was probably the hardest possible way to cross the passage. The athletes mentioned it was cold, wet, and dirty, and the waves hit them like walls. The weather in the Drake Passage changes a lot, but ship captains can always see it coming and change their path. They will move the departure time to have a safety margin and not to get stuck in the middle of the passage in the worst possible conditions. Sometimes, the journey will be smooth and calm, and they call it Drake Lake. Other times, people on the ship will feel rough waves, which is called Drake Shake. Some experienced captains who often cross the passage say that the Drake Lake effect happens once in every 10 crossings. And they see the Drake Shake once or twice in every 10 journeys. A schooner or a kayak will probably not survive the journey among giant waves, but modest vessels and cruise ships have sturdy hulls and advanced stabilizing mechanisms. So, the journey isn't that dangerous anymore, but still, it's quite an adventure, especially if you're seasick. If you don't feel like risking it but want to travel from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean by water the fast way, the Panama Canal is waiting for you. People first started thinking about making a water path across Panama in the 16th century. Back then, a Spanish explorer found out that only a thin piece of land separated the two oceans. But it seemed impossible to build it because of the mountains and thick jungle, so the idea had to wait a couple of centuries. Finally, in 1880, France, led by the man who built the Suez Canal in Egypt, tried to make the canal. But the people who started the construction soon found out it was much harder than it looked on a map. The land in Panama was one of the toughest and most dangerous places to dig a big waterway, Workers had to literally move huge mountains in a jungle full of snakes, where it was really hot and rainy. During the wet season, heavy rain turned rivers into wild rapids and soaked the workers. Sometimes, they didn't see the sun for 2 weeks, and their clothes stayed wet all the time. Big rocks were falling, and tiny mosquitoes that carried malaria made people very sick. And then, an earthquake happened on top of everything. They were losing thousands of people. That's why France decided to abandon the project after 7 years. Then, the United States bought the French assets in the Canal Zone and finished it by 1914. It cost the US around $375 million. The 50-mile-long passage of water saves ships traveling between New York and San Francisco 7,872 miles. Around 14,000 ships use it every year and pay around $1.8 million in tolls. So it looks like it all paid off. Another challenging waterway in this part of the world is the Amazon River. It's around 4,300 miles long and flows through 3 countries with over 30 million people living in its basin. But there isn't a single bridge across it. The river has many marshes and soft soils, so engineers would need to build very long bridges and very deep foundations, which costs a lot of money. Building bridges over deep water is tough, but in other places in the world, engineers can use things like floating platforms to help. The river's path and water levels change a lot during the year. During the dry season from June to November, the river is usually 2 to 6 miles wide. But in the wet season, from December to April, the river can become as wide as 30 miles. And the water level can rise by 50 feet. That's why they can't build floating bridges or pontoons. The riverbanks are made of soft dirt that moves and erodes with the seasons, and it makes things even harder. It would have to be an absolutely unique project to overcome all these challenges. Luckily, there's no pressing need for a bridge across the Amazon right now. The river mostly goes through areas that are sparsely populated, so there aren't so many major roads to be connected by bridges.
The floor starts quaking like it's alive. Books, mugs, and lamps leap off shelves. Your feet slide, your body sways, and you can barely stay upright. It stops for a second, but then it shakes again and again. More than 1,000 times just in one day. This is not how you imagined your trip to Santorini, but it's the new reality. The Santorini seismic swarm started in January 2025. In less than 1 month, there were, get ready for it, more than 20,000 reported earthquakes. For comparison, most cities on Earth go through one small, barely noticeable quake in a year. It all started with small jolts that residents could feel, but tourists might have mistaken for large trucks driving nearby. But by February, things got serious. A magnitude 5.3 quake struck. It's a moderate-strength earthquake, but it was strong enough to rattle homes, break windows and dishes, and terrify the island's population. The Greek authorities declared a state of emergency for Santorini and Amorgos. Thousands of people had to leave their homes. Schools closed, and hotels temporarily evacuated their guests. Santorini is famous for its volcano, the one that blew up in a massive eruption around 1600 BCE and inspired the legend of Atlantis. It's still considered to be active, although there have been no significant eruptions since the 1950s. So it would be logical to blame this monster for all the drama. But nope, these tremors weren't volcanic. Experts said what was happening near Santorini looked like a seismic swarm. It's a series of smaller quakes all happening in the same area. They are happening along faults, which are cracks in the Earth's crust that can suddenly shift when the tension gets too high. Think of the ground like a giant, stressed-out Rubik's Cube. At some point, it twists and snaps somewhere. Near volcanic areas like Santorini, fluids moving underground can sneak into these cracks and make them easier to break. Plus, there's the natural stress from tectonic movements. It's like adding oil to a squeaky, overworked hinge. Suddenly, everything slips. Nobody knows exactly what's coming next. Tracking thousands of tremors isn't easy. Many of them are too small for traditional seismic sensors to pick up, But this time, scientists have their new best friend to help out. I'm talking about artificial intelligence. Thanks to machine learning, researchers can detect patterns in tiny vibrations that humans might miss. This technology has helped a lot to understand the swarm. It lets scientists map which parts of the crust are most active and even predict possible future activity. The AI analysis suggests the quakes aren't random. They seem to be clustered along a fault line near the underwater Colombo volcano. This area has a long history of seismic activity. Even though Colombo hasn't erupted recently, the magma beneath it might be subtly shifting the crust, and it adds tension to the tectonic plates above. It's like a simmering pot. Nothing boils over yet, but the heat is definitely building. The swarm has subsided after a couple of months of constant shaking, but it doesn't mean it's over for good. Even after a lull, another swarm could strike, or a larger quake could happen along the same fault lines. That's why scientists are now studying the data collected from the swarm. If you're thousands of miles away from Santorini and don't have plans to visit, it doesn't mean you're 100% safe from a similar scenario. Seismic swarms like the Greek one happened in the Caribbean, Iceland, and Italy. One of the best documented swarms in history happened in Japan, in a suburb northwest of Tokyo. It was all going on in a town sitting on a seismological observatory, like a secret underground lab for tracking earthquakes. The swarm kicked off in August 1965 with just 3 earthquakes that were so weak nobody could feel them. But things escalated fast, and 3 months later, 100 quakes a day were strong enough for people to feel. On one day, the observatory recorded almost 7,000 quakes. Out of those, 585 were strong enough to actually shake the ground, meaning you could feel a quake roughly every 2.5 minutes. Scientists figured out that the swarm was caused by fluids moving underground, kind of like the Earth's crust, stretching and bubbling. Studying seismic swarms helps scientists predict earthquakes better, understand how Earth's crust moves, and even prepare for future natural disasters globally. For instance, if they can link the patterns of tremors to magma movement or tectonic shifts, they can apply similar models to volcanoes and fault lines in Hawaii, Iceland, or the Pacific Northwest. Santorini is like a living lab where they combine modern tech with traditional knowledge. AI, seismographs, and satellite imaging add to centuries of human observation. The locals who have lived through quakes for generations contribute insights about small tremors, changes in groundwater, and unusual animal behavior. All this helps scientists refine their models. Santorini's swarm has surely grabbed the attention of the whole world, but it's not the only place on Earth with some intense seismic activity. But what makes Santorini unique is its combination of historical volcanoes, underwater fault lines, and the fact that it's a real tourist magnet. The island is not so large, and the effects of even moderate tremors feel stronger and more dramatic than in other regions. In other places, though, even more serious earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic activity are regular news, and the people have learned to live with them. Japan is one of the regions on Earth where earthquakes happen the most because it sits on the edges of 4 tectonic plates. There are around 1,500 of these earthquakes each year that are noticeable. Because of this, the people in Japan have learned to live with earthquakes. There's even a law that sets a rule that buildings in the country should be able to handle earthquakes up to a magnitude of 7 without falling apart. An update 30 years later said that buildings should only have minor damage in such earthquakes and still work as usual. But if an earthquake is even stronger, the law says the building's main job is not to collapse, but to save people's lives. At the most basic level, buildings are made stronger with thicker beams, pillars, and walls so they can handle shaking better. They even construct some buildings on thick layers of padding that separate them from the ground completely, which helps protect them during an earthquake. A skyscraper might sway back and forth a lot and move up to 5 feet, but it won't collapse. On the other side of the Pacific, scientists from the U.S. Geological Survey have studied a dangerous area along the U.S. West Coast. It's called the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Over the past 14,200 years, there have likely been at least 30 big earthquakes in this region. One major quake happened every 500 years on average, but for a long time now, Cascadia has been quiet, and the scientists are getting worried. They think this might be because the area is locked, so the tectonic plates are stuck together and building up a lot of pressure. At some point, a part of the seafloor could suddenly break and move forward by several feet. The shaking would be just 5 minutes, but it would create a powerful tsunami as the seafloor shifts that would last for 10 hours. If it happens, it's going to be the worst natural disaster in the country's history, according to experts. This could make the hillside slide and crumble and take down roads and bridges. Around 620,000 buildings could be badly damaged or even collapse. Scientists are hoping that thanks to advanced AI tech and local communities, they'll be able to better predict earthquakes like this and the one in Santorini. This could save thousands of lives. And for now, we must not forget that the Earth doesn't take vacations when it comes to seismic activity, even in places where you go on vacation.
Before an earthquake shakes the ground, something sneaky might happen first. A slow, quiet movement with no shaking at all. No one is aware that right under their feet, the land is preparing to tremble violently, wreaking havoc, bringing destruction and devastation. A new study shows that such a slow creep might be how earthquakes begin. To figure this out, scientists didn't start with giant pieces of the earth. Instead, they went into a lab and used clear plastic sheets called plexiglass. They pushed 2 sheets of plexiglass sideways against each other, just like how tectonic plates, huge chunks of Earth's crust, push against each other underground. As they pushed, the plastic cracked, kind of like what the Earth does during an earthquake. And even though it was plastic and not rock, the physics, the way things break and move, was the same. Earthquakes happen when 2 tectonic plates try to slide past each other, but they get stuck. The edges between them don't move easily because of something called friction. It's kind of like when your shoes grip the ground. Over time, the plates keep trying to move and stress builds up. Think of it like bending a stick. At first, it doesn't break, but if you keep pushing, it will eventually snap. The spot where the plates are stuck is called a fault, and there's a thin, brittle part in that fault. By brittle, I mean that it doesn't bend, it just breaks. Here's how it happens. First, a tiny crack forms. It's small and moves slowly. There's no shaking yet, but something is already happening under the surface. The crack spreads, building up more energy. When it finally reaches the edge of the brittle zone, boom, it speeds up, suddenly racing forward really fast, almost as fast as sound. And that's when the Earth starts to shake. So scientists decided to find out how that very first crack starts. They conducted their experiment, whose setup was similar to a type of fault in the real world called a strike-slip fault, like the San Andreas Fault in California. Even though the materials, plastic versus rock, are different, the way cracks form and move is exactly the same. The experiment has helped scientists understand that earthquakes don't always start suddenly. Sometimes there's a slow, quiet start, like a warning sign before the big quake. This early stage of an earthquake is called a nucleation front. It's like a seed of a crack, gently creeping through the material long before any actual rupture happens. This quiet and slow movement doesn't release energy into the surroundings. At first, scientists thought of cracks as simple one-dimensional lines, like a straight tear in paper. But something didn't add up. The slow-moving nucleation front wasn't behaving like a normal, fast-moving crack, and it wasn't clear why or how it suddenly sped up and became an earthquake. The answer came when scientists realized they had to think in 2 dimensions instead of 1. Instead of imagining the crack as just a fine line, they began to think of it as a patch, like a growing circle, that starts at the surface where 2 materials touch. As this patch spreads out, more material along its edge has to break. The important thing here is that the energy needed to break the material is related to how long the patch's edge or perimeter becomes. The bigger the perimeter, the more energy it takes to keep breaking. That's why this patch moves slowly at first. It doesn't yet cause the violent shaking we associate with an earthquake. Because it moves without sending shaking waves, this stage is called aseismic. Eventually, the growing cracked patch spreads beyond the special brittle zone, where the materials are stuck. Outside this zone, the energy needed to keep breaking the material doesn't increase anymore. Instead, there's now extra energy building up, more than what's needed to keep the crack growing slowly. This extra energy doesn't stay quiet. It suddenly powers the crack to move much faster, turning it into a full-speed rupture. That's the moment when the earthquake begins and the ground starts to shake. These findings help explain how earthquakes might start off slow and silent before quickly turning dangerous. They show that small, slow cracks can suddenly transform into powerful, fast-moving ruptures if the conditions are right. Scientists believe that they can learn to detect the aseismic stage before a crack speeds up. It might one day be possible to predict earthquakes, or at least understand the warning signs better. Now, even though earthquakes are only the third most common type of natural disaster, they cause the highest number of fatalities. NASA plays an important role in studying earthquakes by using satellites that orbit the Earth. These satellites collect data and images that show how the ground changes after an earthquake. For example, they can detect when the land shifts, rises, sinks, or cracks. These surface changes help scientists learn more about the strength and impact of earthquakes. NASA's satellites can also track changes in nighttime lights. If a city goes dark after a quake, that's a clear sign that the area may have lost power and could need help. Now, how about we talk about the most common earthquake myths, like the one about megaquakes? Some people really worry about super huge earthquakes, but there's a limit to how big they can get. The size of an earthquake depends on the size of the fault where it happens. A longer and deeper fault can cause a bigger earthquake. For example, the San Andreas Fault in California is long, about 800 miles, but not very deep, around 10 to 12 miles. This makes earthquakes bigger than magnitude 8.3 on that fault very unlikely. The biggest earthquake ever recorded happened in Chile in 1960. It had a magnitude of 9.5 and occurred on a huge fault that was almost 1,000 miles long and 150 miles wide. Technically, there's no set limit on the magnitude scale, but an earthquake bigger than magnitude 12 would need a fault larger than Earth, which just isn't possible. Now, earthquakes can happen near the surface or deep underground. Most occur in Earth's crust or upper mantle, down to about 500 miles deep. But the deepest ones happen only at subduction zones, places where one part of Earth's crust slides under another. In California, almost all earthquakes happen in the top 15 miles of the crust. One exception is the Cascadia subduction zone in Northern California, which continues up through Oregon, Washington, and Canada. Another misconception is that the ground can open during an earthquake, but usually that only happens in movies. A giant crack opening and swallowing things up during an earthquake is just fiction. In real life, the ground on either side of a fault slides past each other. It doesn't pull apart or open wide. Small cracks or holes can happen during landslides or ground failures, but not along the actual fault line itself. Faults don't open up because if they did, there'd be no friction, and without friction, there wouldn't be an earthquake at all. Now, some people think California could break off and sink into the ocean during an earthquake, but that's not how it happens. The ocean floor is just lower land with water above it. California can't fall in. What's really happening is that southwestern California is slowly sliding north toward Alaska along the San Andreas Fault. The Pacific Plate, which California sits on, is moving about 2 inches per year, about as fast as your fingernails grow. So, in about 15 million years, Los Angeles and San Francisco could be neighbors. And in 70 million years, Los Angeles might be sitting near Alaska. I can't wait. People often wonder whether an aftershock can be bigger than the earthquake itself. Aftershocks are smaller earthquakes that happen in the same area after a larger one. They're like our planet's way of settling down after the main shock. But if an aftershock turns out to be bigger than the first earthquake, then we call the bigger one the main shock, and the earlier one becomes a foreshock. About 5 to 10% of earthquakes in California are followed by a stronger one within a week. It's also possible for two quakes in the same area to be about the same size. However, very large earthquakes are rare, so it's even rarer to see two huge ones happen close together. Get ready, because one of the Pacific Ocean's most active volcanoes might blow any minute now. Scientists monitoring Axial Seamount, a gigantic underwater lava factory just off the coast of Oregon, say it could erupt literally any time between today and early 2026 at the latest. Yes, it's underwater, but don't get tricked by the ocean's cover. This beast is almost 3 times taller than the Empire State Building. This volcano is inflating like a souffle at a Michelin-starred restaurant, and scientists are so excited they will live stream it. Seriously! So here's the thing. This volcano will explode at any moment now because, well, it's inflating fast. Over the past few months, researchers have noticed that the seafloor is literally rising. It's like Axial is doing its best impression of a waterbed filled with molten rock. Scientists call this inflation, which sounds like something you'd complain about after Thanksgiving dinner. But in volcano terms, it means magma is piling up underground, causing the seafloor to bulge like a souffle that's this close to collapsing. Now, an underwater volcanic eruption might not sound so exotic. After all, most volcanic activity on Earth happens under the sea. Believe it or not, there are more than 1 million submarine volcanoes quietly churning lava beneath the waves as you watch this. The ocean floor is Earth's biggest volcanic hotspot. What makes Axial Seamount so thrilling is that it's under intense scientific surveillance, unlike any other underwater volcano. It's like the star player in a volcanic reality show, with a network of ocean-bottom instruments giving researchers real-time updates on magma movements, seismic tremors, and crust deformation. In fact, Axial Seamount hosts the world's first-ever underwater volcanic laboratory. Scientists have been keeping a constant eye on it since the 1990s, when they installed sensors that now relay live data straight from the seafloor. This kind of monitoring is unheard of elsewhere and has turned Axial into a geological celebrity, one whose behavior we can track with remarkable precision. Besides, Axial is hilariously predictable. It erupts roughly every decade, and right on cue, it's gearing up for another performance. By mid-2024, it had inflated to nearly the same level as before its last eruption, which means the countdown is on. Scientists are so confident in its schedule that they've set up a volcanic advent calendar, waiting for the day when Axial decides to pop. But hold on, Axial Seamount isn't just your average underwater volcano. It's got style, personality, and a geological identity of its own. Now, most underwater volcanoes, called seamounts, tend to look like cones or flattened domes. Axial laughs in the face of tradition with its unfashionably rectangular caldera, a 2-by-5-mile crater that looks like it was designed by a geologist with a ruler and a grudge against curves. Most volcanoes opt for the classic circular look, but Axial, it went full avant-garde. This caldera is punctuated by fissures, vents, lava channels, and mysterious dome-like structures that rise hundreds of feet high. It's like the volcano's wearing a funky geometrical crown instead of the usual rounded hat. What's more, Axial's location is like prime real estate for geological fireworks. It sits right where two major forces collide, literally. First, it's on the Juan de Fuca Ridge, an underwater mountain range formed where two tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart, like a zipper being undone. Second, it's perched atop the Cobb Hotspot, a deep mantle plume that acts like Earth's sneaky magma espresso machine, pumping molten rock from deep inside the planet and fueling a whole chain of seamounts. To put it plainly, it's like the tectonic plates are reluctant dance partners, sliding away from each other, while the Cobb Hotspot acts as the DJ, turning up the heat and keeping the magma party going. This dual influence creates a complex plumbing system inside the volcano, with magma chambers filling, draining, and shifting in ways scientists are still trying to decode. The competition between the spreading plates and upwelling magma is what gives Axial its unique geological fingerprint, and it's also why this volcano keeps surprising us. Now, we said that Axial Summit isn't just a crater. The truth is that inside, the action gets even weirder and cooler. Well, hotter, but you get it. Axial hosts black smoker hydrothermal vents, which blast superheated water at temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Fahrenheit. This is no ordinary underwater hot tub. These vents create one of Earth's most extreme environments, where bizarre creatures thrive in total darkness and scalding heat. Giant tube worms, crabs, colonies of bacteria, and even octopuses live off the mineral-rich plumes that gush from these vents, forming ecosystems completely independent from sunlight and photosynthesis. It's like an alien world beneath the waves, thriving off the volcano's fiery breath. These vent communities are crucial to science, not just because they're strange, but because they may resemble the earliest ecosystems on Earth. Some researchers believe life on our planet may have originated in similar deep-sea hydrothermal environments billions of years ago. Studying them could also help us search for life on icy moons, like Europa and Enceladus, where similar vents might exist beneath their frozen surfaces. When Axial erupts, it's like a natural reset button for these communities. The lava wipes everything out, but within months, life comes roaring back. Proof that even in the most hostile environments, real estate is always in demand. For those worrying about tsunamis or coastal disasters, relax. Axial's eruptions are the underwater equivalent of a slow cooker. The immense water pressure keeps things chill, well, scalding, but not explosive. So the worst thing that happens is some lava decorates the seafloor, and a few crabs have to find new vents to squat in. This means no massive ash clouds or explosive blasts that could reach the surface. Instead, lava oozes out and spreads across the seafloor, sometimes traveling for miles. But for scientists, this eruption is the golden ticket. Understanding Axial's patterns could help predict eruptions elsewhere, even on land. Plus, its bizarre ecosystems offer clues about how life might survive on other planets. Not bad for a volcano that mostly just sits around looking rectangular. Still, the volcano's activity can be heard in the form of thousands of small earthquakes every day. Thousands! As if the volcano itself was groaning and creaking, preparing to burst open. Again, we won't feel a thing, but at least they'll help scientists track the magma's movements and the volcano's eruptive cycle. Now, one of the coolest parts of this story is that scientists are preparing to live stream Axial's next eruption for the first time ever. Imagine watching an undersea volcano in action, live, as it's painting the ocean floor with fresh lava. It's like a front row seat to a natural fireworks display, thousands of feet beneath the waves. The live stream will come courtesy of the Ocean Observatory's initiative, which maintains a series of fiber optic cables linking Axial's instruments directly to shore. It's the Wi-Fi of the deep sea, and it's about to broadcast molten rock in HD. And there's another twist. Scientists have noticed a curious pattern in Axial's eruptions. All three of its most recent eruptions, in 1998, 2011, and 2015, happened between January and April, the months when Earth starts moving away from the Sun. So why? Well, it might have something to do with the Moon's gravitational pull. The Moon's orbit causes ocean tides to rise and fall, which changes the pressure on the seafloor and could help nudge the magma chamber to its breaking point. I guess the Moon isn't just a romantic light in the night sky. It might be the ultimate volcanic whisperer. So, one thing's for sure, when Axial goes, it'll be the best documented underwater eruption in history. So, keep your eyes peeled. This is one natural spectacle you won't want to miss. And who knows, if we're lucky, we might even get deep-sea eruption ASMR out of the deal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be refreshing the live feed like it's a Taylor Swift ticket sale.
Your geography teacher must have told you there are 7 continents in the world. In 2017, scientists made an announcement that changed this universal truth: the discovery of Zealandia. They called for a change in world maps and provided us with some proof, of course. First off, let's take a look at the ocean floor near New Zealand. The continental shelves of this mysterious continent are chilling at a depth of around 3,280 feet below sea level. The nearby oceanic crust dives even deeper at 9,800 feet below that. All of that is giving us those continent vibes, with varying altitudes from deep below the ocean to the majestic Mount Cook, standing tall at 12,217 feet above sea level. Brave geologists have gone deep down to collect rocks from the ocean floor. They found that unlike the nearby oceanic crust, which is made up of fresh basaltic rocks, the crust around New Zealand is one impressive mix. We're talking granite, limestone, sandstone, and some ancient rock types that are incredibly ancient. All this screams continental crust. Finally, scientists have discovered a narrow strip of oceanic crust that separates Australia from the hidden land of Zealandia. It means these two are separate continents. 85 million years ago, Zealandia decided to break free from the supercontinent Gondwana. Millions of years later, the Earth's tectonic plates, those puzzle pieces that make up our planet's crust, started throwing a wild party. The mighty Pacific Plate, the heavyweight champion of tectonic plates, decided to take a dive beneath Zealandia's continental crust. This process is called subduction. As a result, the root of Zealandia, that connection to its continental crust, broke off and went into the depths below. So you see now that it takes millions of years and a lot of action for a new continent to form. But what if the impossible happened and a new continent formed overnight in the Pacific Ocean? The next morning, you'd probably spill your morning coffee while watching the news. For this newfound land to be considered a full-fledged continent, it needs to have a surface area like Zealandia and be a large, uninterrupted chunk of land with some water surrounding it. And here comes the twist. The Pacific Ocean has an average depth of 13,000 feet. So, if a continent wanted to join the party, it would have to push a whole lot of rock upward, shaping its way to the surface. A new continent emerging overnight would make sea levels skyrocket. We'd have to say goodbye to geographically low-lying countries like Bangladesh, Senegal, and the Netherlands. The ocean currents would be in for a wild ride too. The North Pacific subtropical gyre, a vibrant hotspot for marine life, would be thrown off balance. Those poor marine creatures who rely on the currents for their journeys would need some new source of navigation. Plus, the creatures that live permanently in one place could lose their main food source. Oceans are like global free-for-alls, but with a new continent in play, the countries situated nearby would be willing to stake their claim on this unexpected landmass. This new continent would be a blank canvas. No lush landscapes or freshwater sources, just rock and more rock. So, if you were dreaming of relocating to this novelty, you have to wait for some serious terraforming to make it habitable. But for now, let's go back to the real new continent of Zealandia. It's actually a microcontinent, which is an official word for a landmass that has separated from a main continent. In our case, it was Antarctica and then Australia. You could say Zealandia is a bit shy, with only up to 7% of its size peaking above the water's surface. But it's nearly 70% as large as Australia in total and proudly boasts of two major islands we know and love as New Zealand, the North Island and the South Island. Plus, there are many smaller islets. The largest islands have glaciers, like the famous Tasman Glacier on the South Island. Thanks to some glacial action in the past, Zealandia can show off its fjords and valleys. New Caledonia has a tropical vibe with its Oceania and South Pacific connections. The unofficial 8th continent is a hotspot for geological action. Part of it belongs to the Australian plate, while the rest rides the Pacific plate. It has 6 major areas with active volcanoes. And don't forget the geothermal treats. Geysers and hot springs are scattered all over the place, courtesy of the Australian and Pacific plates having a steamy interaction. The underwater world of Zealandia is a treasure chest of mineral deposits and natural gas fields. It's also a scientific playground. During those icy glacial periods, sea levels dropped and more of Zealandia emerged from the depths. The fossils this process left behind are like an encyclopedia of valuable clues about the life that thrived here during ancient times. The search for Zealandia lasted for 375 years. It all started in 1642, when Dutch seafarer and explorer Abel Tasman set on a mission from Jakarta, Indonesia. Back in the day, Europeans were sure that there had to be a massive land down under to balance out their own continent up north. They even had a fancy name for it, Terra Australis. Tasman was determined to become the first to find it. He went west, then south, then east, all the way to the South Island of New Zealand. But here's where things took a turn for the worst. The local Maori people, who had been living there for centuries, didn't exactly roll out the red carpet. They rammed one of Tasman's small boats, and sadly, 4 of the Europeans met their ends. What happened next remains a mystery. But a few weeks later, Tasman sailed back home without ever stepping foot on this mysterious land he believed to be the Great Southern Continent. He never came back. The explorer didn't even realize that he was actually right all along about the existence of a missing continent. And you already know it only became official in 2017. Another lost and found continent isn't hiding in the ocean, but under Europe. It's called the Greater Adria, and it collided with Europe and started to sink under it around 140 million years ago. Today, it lies beneath Italy, Greece, and the Baltics. Its size and even shape matched that of Greenland, the world's largest island. Greater Adria is no longer visible, but it left some clues. Parts of it were embedded in the Alps. Other chunks were incorporated into present-day Italy and Croatia on the other side of the Adriatic Sea. Limestone rocks from the former continent started to change once they were under the European landmass. Tremendous heat and pressure spread over tens of millions of years changed their structure. Out goes the limestone, in comes the marble. All the Greek and Roman temples you admired on your summer vacation were constructed using this marble. It was sort of a going-away gift from a long-lost continent. You don't notice this, but our planet never stops moving, and it happens deep beneath our feet. 120 million years ago, Australia and Antarctica were a single piece of land. They went their separate ways, but Antarctica didn't leave empty-handed. Today, there is an oceanic plateau in the Indian Ocean. Long ago, it was connected to another lost continent, the Kerguelen microcontinent. Scientists believe that it made a land bridge between India and Antarctica. To find out what it was like, we can look at a tiny archipelago in the southern Indian Ocean. These islands are all that is left of the ancient landmass. They have a cold climate and feature glaciers because they're so close to Antarctica. But in the past, the climate must have been temperate with plenty of rainfall. The animals and plants would have been similar to those that we find in tropical regions today. The lost continent landscape was probably much like that of New Zealand. Our planet keeps changing, and at some point, all the continents will reconnect with each other, forming one supercontinent again. And maybe then, future humans will wonder, what if our continent broke into pieces tomorrow?